Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. You know how there are some really cringy phrases that do the rounds in society, like, oh, it's not the winning that matters, it's the taking part that counts. You can't help but roll your eyes and think, yeah, do me a favour. Well, I'm about to put out one of those cringy phrases here myself, and that is that there were no losers here today. Both men were victorious because they were absolutely incredible. Two gladiators emanating the warrior spirit that resides within them from every single pore of their being. It was an incredible fight as Artur Beterbiev emerges victorious after stopping Anthony Yarde in the 8th round of their fight. And I need to give Tunde Ajayi props on two major fronts. First and foremost, it was a decision spawned out of love to pull him out of the fight, because he had wilted, he'd taken a lot of punishment, and he was ready for the taking. And you don't want to see an exclamation mark type knockout where the side effects of that carry on through the course of not just his career but his life. You want this young man to be healthy and to be able to enjoy the fruits of his labour. And he also proved tonight that he's a world-class light heavyweight, capable of operating against an elite light heavyweight who's going to go down as a Hall of Famer and one of the best to ever do it in this division. And he was able to hang with him and really cause him some problems. So you want to see him fight again and you want to see him fresh. So shout out to Tunde for that. The other area where I need to give Tunde a lot of credit is, in fact, let me give you some background context first. My channel was absolutely tiny initially. I'd be getting 100 or 200 views and stuff like that. I was putting out betting strategies for boxing mainly. I was also doing football, I was doing all sorts of things. And it wasn't a proper boxing channel. The quality of the production was abysmal. I used to have this microphone, long-time subscribers will know, which was this white ball on this metal rod, and I'd hold it to my mouth. It looked like something you'd buy from Love Honey. It was shocking. The camera was so fuzzy. Honestly, you'd get better quality if you were to see Katie Price acting out Shakespeare. It was abysmal. But unbeknownst to me at the time, because I was still doing the technical breakdown videos, Hatman, the analyst from my favourite boxing channel, was actually following the channel, and he put out a message first on my channel and then he sent out a video. And he said to his subscribers, if you're not following Chris Andre, what are you waiting for? He's one of the best boxing analysts you will ever come across anywhere. He said he's absolutely forensic in his technical analysis, and I was buzzing, I was calling friends and stuff like that. Now, the video he was initially responding to was a defense of Tunde Ajayi. And I was defending Tunde at the time because a lot of people used to speak about Anthony Yarde as though he was just this muscular, athletic guy. And I always used to explain to people, listen, he's not just a brawler. This isn't a Seth Mitchell type of character who was a really good athlete and then moved over to boxing and fell short because he was just an athlete. There are a lot of subtleties to his game. He must have learned them from somewhere. So this idea that he was just this guy screaming lions in the camp, it felt like a witch hunt to me, and it felt unfair. And that's when I did this defense of Tunde Ajayi. And I was eternally grateful, and I still am, to Hatman for taking the time to so graciously do that for me. And since then, the channel has grown exponentially. But the point I'm making here is that Tunde always got so much stick, and I've always defended him. Well, tonight, I felt like he got his tactics spot on. And no doubt James Cook played the part in that, Spencer Fearon, because Spencer always says, I don't really see myself as a trainer, but I'm more of a strategist. And they all would have had input, there's no doubt about it. But they got their tactics spot on. We spoke in the preview about certain elements that Anthony Yarde would have to do if he was going to have a chance of winning this fight. And he put those into practice brilliantly. We also spoke about certain things that Beterbiev would have to do, and he put those into practice brilliantly too. So let's talk about the fight and what happened. We spoke in the preview about how Artur Beterbiev sometimes has a tendency to get a little bit reckless upon his entry. And if Anthony Yarde can retreat, get on the back foot and try to lure him in, preferably with a right hand down the pipe, or if he is going to throw that sweeping left hook, it has to be a check left hook where he gets off the line. Not that sweeping left hook which he has a tendency to do where he stays on the line and sweeps it around and you can get caught as a result, something that plagued George Groves' career in the big moments. And he did not really throw the right hand down the pipe, but the check left hook he threw and he was getting off the line. So the approach that I was saying he had to try for the first round and a half and see if he could lure him onto something, otherwise divert to tactics and go inside, he did lure him in. And I had him winning the first couple of rounds. You also saw uppercuts landing from Anthony Yarde, and again we spoke about that in the preview as well. Beterbiev will often square up, and then when he squares up and he starts throwing these hooks, his form of defense will be to drop his head, and if you're going to throw a straight punch, he'll catch it almost on the line, the hairline of his forehead, and that's the hardest part of the skull. So he's almost saying, I can take the shot there and I'm going to land something big on you, usually around the guard. I'll cup it around the guard, turn the knuckles over and really cause some serious pain there and some serious problems. Or I'll just drop my head and it will fly over my head. And that movement of trying to duck forward, it could potentially move onto an uppercut. And you saw Anthony Yarde have some success with uppercuts. On the inside as well, although Anthony didn't get as hands-on as I felt he should have, maybe he felt the physical strength of Beterbiev. There was one point where he seemed to hurt Beterbiev, and Beterbiev was holding him, and Anthony couldn't quite break free. And although Anthony Yarde's a very muscular man and clearly very athletic, when it comes to sheer brute force, strength, power, like blunt force trauma, so to speak, Beterbiev seems like the stronger man to me. He's got a bigger head, bigger wrists, bigger hands. And he just seems more effortless in a way with his power. And so I feel as though maybe in that clinch, Anthony Yarde felt that, listen, maybe there's a discrepancy here in strength. I'm going to have to put in too much effort to try and use framing and head control against this man. Maybe he's too physically strong, and so he didn't do it as much. I personally would have felt that from the sort of middle rounds onwards, he probably should have gotten a little bit more hands-on to dictate the tempo, because I felt that by trying to stay on the back foot throughout, it was clear that he was working very, very hard. Even in the first round, which I gave to Anthony, I gave the first two to Anthony, you could see he was working very hard. The jerky movements, the upper body, changing the looks, he was going flat out with those movements. It sort of looked like Beterbiev was doing these micro movements to get him to move. So he was almost controlling the tempo to get Anthony to really work hard, while he was just catching a breath and saying, okay, I'm going to use foot pressure here. Every time you slow down, I land something big, but ultimately with a lot of feints, with a lot of foot pressure, I'm going to make you work hard. The third round is when I felt Beterbiev started to really land the jab. He started to find a home for the jab. And in the fourth round, we saw that Anthony Yarde, who started the round really well, got caught with a big, I think it was an uppercut. I'm pretty sure it was an uppercut. It might have been a hook, but I think it was an uppercut. And why did he get caught with it? Again, something we mentioned in the preview. He was walking in, and so his feet came too close together, and he just wasn't in a position to be able to readjust essentially quickly enough, and he got lured onto a shot himself. So again, something we spoke about in the preview about Beterbiev potentially having success. He did have success with it. And on more than one occasion, you saw Anthony overcommit. He was winning rounds, say he'd be winning the majority of the round, he'd overcommit, he'd fall short, get caught with a big shot, and in the last 30 or 40 seconds of the round, it will be all Beterbiev. So I thought the 5th, 6th and the 7th were actually swing rounds. The 5th and the 7th, there were examples of Anthony Yarde winning the majority of the round. I had him winning the first 2.5 minutes of the first round, and Beterbiev came on strong in the last 30 seconds of the round. And in the round 7, he came on strong in the last 40 seconds of the round. And you saw the variation of Beterbiev on the inside, the little hook, and then followed by an uppercut, a little Mike Tyson move there, hook to the body, come off the line and throw an uppercut through the center line. There was a swing round as well in between those two, whereby I felt Beterbiev started well and finished the round well, but in the middle round it was Anthony Yarde's. By the end of the fight, I had, so not including the round where there was the knockdown and the eventual stoppage, I had Anthony Yarde 67-66 up. So I had him up by 1 round, but I did feel that Beterbiev had more rounds to go to. In other words, I felt that Anthony had to land something big in any given moment to win the fight, even though it was touch and go. It just felt like he wasn't controlling the tempo as well as Beterbiev. In other words, had it gone into those championship rounds, it felt like Yarde may have started to slow and Beterbiev would have kicked on. But listen, you're talking about an elite level light heavyweight. He's knocked out everyone he's fought, top fighters. He's, Vosdick, Joe Smith Jr. Joe Smith was a former world champion and he obliterated him. Marcus Brown, Anthony Yarde today. He's really developing a legacy. If you start to include the amateur record as well and what he's achieved there, you're talking about an all-time great fighter here, a Hall of Famer. And Anthony Yarde was able to hang with him. I did say earlier today on Twitter that when he fought Kovalev, one thing you have to take into consideration is that despite the fact that he had, he was being outboxed. He was being outboxed comprehensively by Kovalev. Despite that, he still had that big moment. And so as a result of that, for this fight as well in the preview, I said that I felt that Yarde could start well. Beterbiev, I felt, would take the fight in the rounds that he did between sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, that sort of period, 7, 8, 9, and he did get it in the 8th. So the result went as I expected it to go. But the effort that Yarde put in, when you're able to be comprehensively outboxed the way you were against Kovalev and still have a big moment, it shows that if you can close the gap with those little errors he makes, the technical errors, he can start to catch up with guys because he's very talented, and you saw that today. What a performance. I'd love to see him again at a high level. Hopefully we get to see him again against a top level fighter. I mean, look, we need the undisputed title fight, right? So Beterbiev against Bivol is the fight that needs to be made now. And none of this stuff about Bivol's boring that Bob Arum has said in the past. None of this stuff about, oh, if it happens on Showtime, have a split thing. Sorry, on ESPN, have a split thing. Have DAZN host it. Have ESPN host it. And if you're not going to do that and only one of them is able to host it, you're going to have to bite the bullet, Bob. Because the fact of the matter is, he's 38 years old. He's tight at the weight. He's had another war today. And you don't want to be in a position where he gets toppled by a guy who's not quite at that level and he misses out on that massive, big payday fight and the legacy fight of Undisputed. Because Bivol's the younger man, and the fact of the matter is he can wait him out. He's also got the option of fighting Canelo Alvarez, the cash cow of the sport. So when you're making an offer to make a fight happen, you have to take that into consideration. Because what you're telling him is, I want you to leave that cash cow on the table. Leave all that money on the table and fight Beterbiev. Well, there has to be a financial incentive there. Otherwise, he will wait you out. He's still going to eventually go for his undisputed shot, because as far as he's concerned, he's never going to lose that individual belt. So if he has to collect over a longer period of time, that's how he's going to see it, and he's going to back himself. Now, don't get me wrong, Bivol's not going to want to wait him out because you don't want belts to get fragmented. So you do want to see the fight happen. But the fact of the matter is, Bivol is the one that's in an advantageous position. So make the fight happen now, that it's fair for Beterbiev, for his legacy. Do what's best for Beterbiev and don't engage in a selfish approach where you're only thinking about the network. And in terms of the network, of course, they're going to think of what's best for them. But if you believe in Beterbiev and he goes and gets that win and he becomes the undisputed champion, well, now you've then got a superstar again who you can then have another massive fight with whoever you want. You could run it back with Anthony Yarde. Who would not want to see that fight? If Anthony Yarde goes in there now against somebody else who's a good name and wins, and he's the undisputed champion, Beterbiev, and Anthony Yarde puts in a really good performance against somebody, well, then that's going to be another big money fight. You could have it in a much bigger arena potentially here, because that transcended the sport today. I've got a lot of friends of mine who are football fans who have been sending me messages going, oh my word, what a fight, that was amazing, and so on and so forth. People would love to see that again. So focus on getting Beterbiev that undisputed title shot. He deserves it. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.